Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Naga and Charlie State.
Our headlines, including a ban on alcohol after 9 o'clock at night.
More businesses are laying off staff. New figures show firms making redundancies spiked in September. I'll have the details.
Good morning. The man of the moment is back in the spotlight, this time for his exploits on the pitch, as Marcus Rashford's hat-trick fires Manchester United to a comfortable victory over RB Leipzig in the Champions League.
Good morning. We've got a band of heavy rain moving from the west towards the northeast through the course of today with gusty winds around it. The strongest winds will be in the west, especially so with height and exposure, but it's going to feel that bit milder. I'll have all the details in about 10 minutes.
Really shouldn't take anything to do with these elections for granted, Charlie.
We watch closely. David, thank you very much.
11 minutes past 6 is the time. Let's talk to Carol, find out what's happening with the weather. Oh, that's not a very, very enlightening picture. Well, encouraging picture, should I say. Morning.
Keeping you in suspense this morning, Naga. Good morning, Charlie and you, and good morning to everybody else as well. The weather over the next few days.
Carol,
thank you very much.
You.
Pleasure.
13 minutes past 6. Let's take...
The GPs are getting plans in place for giving the vaccine as soon as we have it. And what's happening on the ground is we're now trying to get the flu vaccines given because we have it's a basic thing to do with fridges currently occupying the fridges to free up the space.
So, Rosemary, one last thought from you.
But I think the way the government are tackling it here, which is looking at different regions, is a very sensible approach. But I really young people's futures as much as possible.
Dr. Rosemary, always good to catch up with you. Thank you very much.
It is 6:41. Good morning to you. So we talk about Marcus Rashford off the pitch, don't we? A lot. A real lot. Holly, morning.
Good morning. Finish the season. So at this rate, if Dr. Rosemary is still listening, if she's got any advice for any of the rugby league players, I'm sure they'd welcome it right now.
She always has advice for everyone.
She always has good advice.
She's got the answer.
She has. Holly, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, time now is 6:46. That means it's time to have a look at the weather. Carol's got all the details for us right now.
Looking lovely there, Carol. Morning.
Thank you, Naga. And Charlie, good morning. Good morning to you as well. Look at this rain. Now, some of us today will see some...
Charlie, Carol, thanks so much. Do you know what? It was just because I was looking at the back of Charlie's head before looking at you, and I just had his... it doesn't matter. I'm sorry. I apologise, Carol.
Could be worse, couldn't it, Carol? Could be worse.
Oh, absolutely, Charlie. I don't mind being confused with you at all.
There we go.
You'd never get anyone's name wrong, Carol, would you?
Never, Naga. Florence.
See you later.
Let's see, time now is 6:49. Six-year-old Tony inspired many with his sponsored walks on prosthetic legs and crutches. Now, he's been given a Pride of Britain award. We'll get his reaction.
Good morning. Today we've got a band of heavy rain moving from the west towards the northeast, accompanied by gusty winds, the strongest of which will be in western areas, but it will feel a bit milder than it did yesterday. I'll have all the details in 10 minutes.
Good morning. It's Thursday, the 29th of October. Our top story is that the second...
Still try and cross to the UK.
Nick, thank you very much. That's Nick Beaker, correspondent in Dunkirk for us this morning.
A report into the Labour Party's handling of accusations of anti-Semitism. 12 minutes past 7 is the time. Let's talk to Carol. Now, Carol, morning to you. Now the nights are drawing in. It feels as if the weather is really chopping and changing really, really quickly. Like one day, fabulous, I can play golf. The next day, I'm stuck at home being miserable.
Well, Naga, you're kind of right, yes. And this weekend, it's looking pretty unsettled. In fact, today it is as well. But another thing you'll notice if you're out and about is that it is also going to be details on the weather, and we'll look ahead in about half an hour.
Oh, good. OK. Carol, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Did you say Charlie again?
I don't know what it is. I think because you're in my eye line. Oh, look, she is laughing.
It's early in the morning, isn't it, Carol? Is it 7:15? It's early.
I'm so sorry.
Way too early.
It's Charlie's head keeps getting in the way every time I look at you, and then I can't distinguish. I'm sorry.
Well, we're very similar, though, Charlie and myself.
Yes.
We look very alike.
Yes, yes.
Carol, we will be back with you a little bit later on. Of course, all the sport, all the business as well coming up a little later on. Time now, it's 14 minutes past 7. The leader of Ashfield District Council a short time ago should be said to you, I mean, you're the community secretary. He said that his communications with government, I think the phrase he used was bonkers and unworkable when it was first proposed that I think midnight last night that they were going to bring in these restrictions, which is what the government wanted, and then they said can't do that, got to do it later. I mean, the communication still clearly is an issue, but you're saying in a place like that locally they would make those decisions, but you would not, as a government, impose further restrictions arbitrarily on those areas. Is that right?
Well, what I'm saying is that we want to try to avoid having a national blanket approach, that we see that happening in some other parts of Europe, but we want to try to avoid it, that we try to have this regionalised approach. That makes sense to us today. We are working very hard to ensure that we have productive conversations with local leaders. There's a balance because we need to act quickly, and the longer that one discusses with local council leaders and directors of public health and members of parliament, inevitably that leads to delay in seeing that kind of approach happening more on the continent now as well. These are difficult balanced judgments, and obviously we keep them under review. People would expect us to do so and keep following the scientific advice that we're receiving. But the judgment that we're making today is that if we follow the regionalised approach, we've got a good prospect of getting this under control, because the alternative, we know, is very destructive and damaging to people's livelihoods.
Wow. What?
Is there a Saint?
Do you know
Is there a
what?
Saint? Is there a Saint Norman?
I believe possibly. I'm no expert here.
Is there a saint?
Okay.
Is
I
there...
didn't really expect you to know the answer.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I don't really know
why I
what you
asked.
wanted from me.
Okay.
Hang on, I get my big book of saints out.
Can we get on to the?
What about?
Yes, just check if you would.
What about Saint Carol?
Hey, yeah, there's definitely a Saint Carol. We all know her.
It's a myth, you know. There's
to
nothing
tell people
true.
that.
There's nothing saintly about that. Trust me. Thanks, Holly.
She's listening in somewhere. Where
At
is
least I
she?
got your
There you
name
are, Carol.
right. Morning.
I know, I'm in shock that you got my name right. Quite like being called Charlie. Charlie Kirkwood's got a ring to it.
It has?
Good morning. It has. Good morning, everybody. Now, this morning...
Carol, thank you very much. We'll see you later on.
See ya.
Pleasure.
Over the last few months, we've been following the story of...
Weather, Carol's there for us this morning. Do you know what? This time of year, Carol, I'm looking at that rain behind you. You know, when you look at the forecast, not necessarily your forecast, although yours are wonderful, and you see that thing where it says
Maybe.
90% chance of rain. Oh,
Yes,
that feeling.
I know. Oh, bless you, Charlie. Well, there certainly is that today. We've got
pal.
technical
A gustometer.
equipment to do that.
Gustometer.
Yeah,
A
that's what you use.
gustometer.
Well, you can
It's a
use,
well-known-
you can use an anemometer to do that, and you get some really good ones, which are like egg cups. They're quite basic, but you just hold it, or you can get the technical digital ones.
Don't you think
Of course, as well.
gustometer
Measure
sounds
the wind.
better? I very rarely agree with Charlie, but it does, doesn't it?
For a second, I thought Carol said you can use an animal.
Animal.
I was thinking, which animal?
She was
Like
going to
a
say that to
a
me.
horse? You hold
Holding
a
up
horse
some
up and see.
raccoon in the air or something
I don't
like
know.
that.
But it wasn't that, so we're okay.
We're all right.
Anemometer.
Yeah,
Yes,
no animals
we
are
know.
harmed in the creation of the
13
forecast.
minutes past 8 is the time now.
The book, yes, one of those little tiny moments that nobody really knows about. And what happened was, I think it's one of those things that happen to everybody. A dream, which all of us have. You know, it's about. I always used to say, one day, I'm going to have a Rolls Royce, and I'll drive around in a Rolls Royce. Or I remember when my first girlfriend, and I was only at school.
And did you?
So that was. No, I never did. Far beyond my capabilities, I'm afraid. But it was a dream.
Oh, well,
Sorry.
I mean, you've got to have them. And I think, you work
Yeah.
hard enough. I think that's one of the things that runs through the book is hard work. And it doesn't always come, the things you want don't always come quickly. And I was really fascinated with, just with Only Fools and Horses, when John Sullivan, and this is the way things work, isn't it, in TV, or used to at least, handed you the script in the lift at the BBC in the days where you used to kind of just meet people around, and there were two things that happened with Only Fools and Horses that I think that was really interesting. One, you weren't necessarily in mind to play Del Boy. And two, the
No.
success of it, even though now we're so familiar with all of it, the success of it came from repeats.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Is the ability to give, say, situation comedy, which obviously Fools and Horses comes into that bracket, is to give it a chance. And we're so busy wanting instant fame I'm not talking about the actors, but instant success, which is television companies, right? They don't let it breathe. And what happened with Fools and Horses, the first series went out and everybody went, well, I have no idea what that's all about. Switch it on to something else. And we got about 3 viewers and that gave it that impetus for people to go, I recognize those. Oh, it gave the audience a chance to associate with the characters. And that's the reason, one of the reasons it took off. And the other thing, of course, it was written brilliantly by a man who actually lived there, and all of those characters on Fools and Horses were people.
Referring to there was that you were possibly going to play Grandad. Is that right?
Well, yes, because that when I went into the interview with the director part that I won. And so they said, all right, well, go on then, see if you can read that. And the rest, I suppose, is history.
Now, I noticed that you make reference, you were talking a little earlier about, working hard, and you have worked very hard all your life, prolific. And I think at one point you say you're the 4th hardest working actor in Britain. Is that the 4th? Who are the ones who are ahead of you in the list?
Him and Helen Mirren, yes. Yeah, she's another one. It's got to be knocked off their perch.
There were 3 ahead of you. There were 3 ahead of you. You've named 2, and I think you know all 3.
They're on the list.
I don't.
They're on the list.
Yes, they're on the list.
They're on the list.
Naga, you may look them up and correct me where I'm wrong.
I will. But
Thank you.
I'll tell you what about the contrast then of being the 4th hardest working actor in the UK pre-lockdown to then lockdown, and you coming up with ideas using Trigger's broom for social distancing, trying to think of something creative to do with yourself?
So that was the motivation, to try and help us all in these very, very silly times, difficult times, to try and bring a little smile to people's faces. And that was the reason I did it.
Right at the beginning of the book, you do that thing. I don't know if many people do it these days. You say, when I look in the mirror, what do I see? And what is it that you see, David, when you look in the mirror these days?
Cup of tea, and I was 35. She said, when I came out with the tea, I was 75. And she said, that's what it feels like. And so that's what it feels like to me. 1 minute I'm up there at 35 doing swinging and wheeling and dealing and doing Del Boy, and the next minute, here I am sort of waiting for my next job.
Can I ask, David, just if we're talking about the progression of years and everything, one of the stories that really charmed me was your grapefruit plant, which went from a seed that nearly choked you. I think it was in the 70s, and you were in your flat, and you still have it. And we were going to try to get you to do this interview with your grapefruit plant because I think it's a massive achievement. You still have it. What's this, 50 years on?
Yeah. Now, listen, it not is true that I planted it, a pick, and that was, I don't know what it was, 60 years or 70 years ago, whatever it was. And I've still got it, I've cared for it, and it's now a tree that is nearly 6 foot tall.
So I'd like to think that you talk to the tree. Do you talk to the tree?
Do I have done on occasions, because what happened was that one year to say how wonderful you were, that is brilliant. Now you've got to keep, I want to see the fruit. So here I am talking to this silly tree. And of course, as soon as I turned my back, they all fell off. But I have talked to it since, and it's refused to produce any fruit. So if anybody out there can know how to achieve more fruit, please let me know. Thank you.
Oh, can I tell you, we're now going to be inundated with viewers who will have grapefruit plant tips. One of the other things I found really amusing was that, and don't take this the wrong way, but I wouldn't have thought of you as someone who is mega conscious about their waistline, simply because you don't have to be, obviously. But Darling Buds of May, one of the things that I took away from your experience on Darling Buds of May was all the food and learning about continuity as well and how it's filmed.
Yeah, well, that's just one of the things that I did put on a lot of weight, by the way, of the plate, and I consumed it during the course of the operation. But as you probably know, continuity means you've got to do it once in the wide shot, then in close-up, then in the two shot, and then in the, the singles, and you have to eat it the same way that you ate in the wide shot. So you eat and consume about 3 or 4 of those huge fishes. So that's how I managed to put on weight. But whatever the character is asked to do, in a way, you try to invest in it, and it's take yourself away. It's not me. That is what Pa Larkin would do, and he would really enjoy his food. I mean, it's one of those things that makes acting a pleasure sometimes.
Now, can I just ask you, Dave, helicopter? You've been piloting a helicopter, and someone's gone. Isn't that Del Boy at the controls?
Well, it's very difficult to do that when you're 1,000 feet in the air.
Okay, it's a good point. You make a very good point.
Yes.
But I was thinking maybe as you stepped out of the helicopter.
Well, that's a very good point. Thank you. It's difficult to recognise anybody with 1,000 feet, but there. Yes, is the two. I flew into the Royal Air Tattoo, the Royal Air Show, many times. I'm an honorary member of that. You know that I've come out of that helicopter because they make the announcement. No, coming in now along the airfield is David Jason in his helicopter. He'll be coming, and there's like 10 million people all going, oh, look, that's him there. Look, here he comes. I recognise him at 1,000 feet.
You see, it can be done, David. It can be done. Do you ever, because you're 80 now, which you make very clear in the book, and this you've had a very subdued birthday, and I won't ask you where you went because you refuse to say where you went for your birthday with your wife and daughter because you don't want to reveal the restaurant because you're being selfish about it, basically. But when you have your test for the helicopter licence, I know, the record is held by an 87-year-old at the moment?
Yes.
So do you get that nervous feeling? Like sometimes if you walk through airport security and you know you've got nothing wrong, but you're still worried that someone's going to kind of pull you up.
Nothing on? Well, how many fields have you been through with nothing on?
Nothing. Well, you know what I mean. Actually, many. That's how I travel, David. Free and easy.
Blimey. I'm going to be in the airport next time you travel.
But
no, you'll be up in the air. You'll be 1,000 feet up in the air.
Exactly. You wouldn't recognise me. Do you ever get that feeling, when you're having that test? Because you obviously want to keep flying. Do you ever get that nervous feeling?
Well, yes, of course, you're absolutely right. The test, the medical test, otherwise they wouldn't let you up in the air. So, yeah, I do get a bit nervous about meeting the medical people, yeah. And then basically getting on a treadmill. You have to get on a treadmill and do a lot of running, which I'm pretty good at. I'm pretty fit, See that? Yeah, for dancing, yeah.
Well, with that little pose there, it's a perfect time for us to end. David, it's been a delight talking to you this morning. Really lovely. Thank you so much. And the book is an absolute romp, and it's just so much detail in it. It's great. Lovely to see you. Thank you.
Thank you too. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Oh, it's like being invited into his living room, wasn't it? Having a cosy chat.
Del of a Life, the book.
Yeah,
Del of a Life.
That's the David's book. You're watching Breakfast. 8:59 is the time.
Competitive. 13 minutes past 9.
Eddie's book is available to buy from today. That's all from Breakfast this morning. We will, of course, be here with you tomorrow from 6 o'clock.
Now on BBC One, it's time for Morning Live.
Basically, we have not been able to do any fundraising over the year. A lot of the fundraising activities that we would do are out in the community around people, and obviously that can't happen at the minute. And it's put us...
Activities such as rock climbing, abseiling, and just stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily do.
Oh, fantastic. And Harry, in a moment, you're going to be putting that bacon on the fire for us. Another activity for you. Ruben, how would you...
Paul, is it a scout campsite in Wakefield? Well, that looks absolutely delightful, Lakshmi.
It does, doesn't it, Charlie? I mean, look at that, the warming, inviting glow of the fire, and gathering around a campfire is one of the classic activities of being a scout, and it's no different for this scout group here in Wakefield in West Yorkshire, but like more than 500 other scout groups across the country, this one is at risk of closure. And let's speak to the activities that the children do here, and you can get a sense of how important this is for their social life and their community and the activities that they can get up to. And one of those activities that hasn't changed, a good old traditional one, is having a sing-song around the campfire. So, without further ado, let's see how this goes. Take it away, guys.
I work in a button factory, and I press this button with my hands, and with my feet, and with my head, and with my paw.
I love it. It's bad.
Oh my goodness, it's like this.
Well, no better way to wake you up in the morning and get you feeling refreshed for the day. And if that wasn't enough, we've got some bacon on the campfire as well. I only wish that I could send it over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Luxembourg. It looks great. And whets the appetite, doesn't it? Many of the groups at risk of closure are located in deprived areas. That is according to the Scout Association Chief Executive. Matt Hyde is joining us now from St Albans. Very good. Much. That is Matt Hyde, who's Chief Executive of the Scout Association. It's such an important point, isn't it? And evidenced by Matt saying just amongst their members, so many young people just feeling worse than they did before in terms of the way their outlook on things is very, very difficult. And getting together with someone, in this case with a scout group or whatever, can really make a difference.
Makes a massive difference. It's 9:05. Time to find out briefly. Take a look at the headlines where you are this morning. We'll see you shortly.